Hello there and welcome to another edition of The Big Q. Today I'm joined by the Ambassador and Head of the European Delegation to Rwanda, Ambassador Nicola Belemon. Of course, we're talking about bilateral ties and how countries across the world are joining hands to fight the pandemic that is, of course, grappling the whole world. Thank you, sir, for making time to be with us and welcome to our studios.
Thank you. Thank you.
I know that the delegation, of course, of the European Union to Rwanda announced a commitment of about 52.8 billion Rwandan francs to help the nation during this COVID-19 pandemic. Why is it important that countries today are coming together in solidarity to help, other countries, especially the African nations, to fight this pandemic?
Well, this situation reminds us how interconnected we are. This virus knows no borders, and also shows the importance of diplomacy and multilateral cooperation. The European Union has been in the forefront into this global response to the coronavirus, aware as we are that on our own we cannot face this situation. So we are facing an extraordinary situation which was unexpected, unpredictable, and that's why I think it's very important to bring all the actors together. And in this spirit, the European Union has also promoted a kind of a pledging marathon only a few days ago that has raised 7.4 billion euro to, let's say, facilitate the, development, the collaborative development and the universal distribution of diagnostic, treatment and vaccine against the virus. So in this spirit, I think it's very important to reaffirm the value of multilateralism, to bring people together and to find and to approach joint challenges and to find joint solutions.
Speaking of vaccine, I think every other country today is trying their best to beat it, and actually get a vaccine. Yet we have other countries that believe a vaccine is not the way to go. In your opinion, what do you think should be the united message, for the whole world to understand? Because you can't be telling people that vaccines are not, the right way, yet we know we have a pandemic that is killing people at hand today.
Well, this pandemic is completely unknown. So we are facing a new kind of challenge. And that's why I think we should also, let's say, be patient, but also support scientific research that will allow to identify the best tools to fight against the virus. And as I mentioned, the European Union is extremely involved into the development of a vaccine, but also to the distribution and the availability, the affordability of treatment and diagnostic. So I think it's very important to have a kind of a scientific approach, combined, of course, with political decisions when it comes also to the socio-economic impact of the virus.
Absolutely. Now, the European Union, rather, we know that is a major trade partner for most countries, including our own country today. And with this pandemic, I'm sure it has affected a lot of trade. What would you say, how largely has this affected, basically, the trade?
Well, the European Union is strongly supporting the vision and the ambition of our partners, and in our case of Rwanda. And this is through our political dialogue, but also through development cooperation. But as you mentioned, it's very important, and recently we are really emphasizing the importance of supporting investments and trade. So as you mentioned, this pandemic will have and is having an impact first of all, at the value chain level, so at the supply side. So I think a number of countries are facing some problems into ensuring a normal kind of production, a level and quality of production. And of course, transport has also had an impact on this situation. So it's unavoidable that this situation is having kind of a negative effects on trade. We're working hard at doing our best to preserve trade flows, and this is also thanks to the work of different governments, but also their private sector, including the air industry, who's trying really to go back, I would say, not on a business as usual situation, but at least to ensure the regular flows that will also allow, the import and the exports of goods in the country.
Absolutely. Of course, in terms of trade also, you've mentioned aviation, you've mentioned agriculture, but we look also in terms of education. I think there's also a very huge need for support for, let's say, the children in the rural areas who can't afford to go online to study. How can you help here? What's the plan, for example?
That's a very relevant question because, you know, as we are facing an unpredictable situation, I think the whole, let's say, system had to adapt to this new situation. Education, of course, is a relevant element of the equation. And allow me also to praise and to congratulate Rwanda for these rapid and effective measures that have been taken. We are monitoring the situation in close, of course, coordination with the authorities. And we are, let's say, considering supporting the country to underpin the government's efforts to face this situation. And this will cover mainly socio-economic aspects. So in particular, the availability of food and especially support to those informal workers who have lost their work almost overnight as a result of this situation. Education, as you mentioned, is extremely important. I mean, we can hardly, and this is a challenge everywhere, it's not only the case of Rwanda. And that's why we're trying to identify in a partnership with other development partners and with the government the different tools and the different strengths of this support and the response to the coronavirus. Access to, let's say, IT is indeed an issue. And not only for students, I can also tell you about our own experience in terms of remote working, where, of course, we are already extremely well equipped. But, of course, we had to adapt. And in some cases, of course, the availability of the appropriate hardware, but also access to quality connection was an issue. Yeah. We are, of course, very lucky, so to speak, in Rwanda because of the excellent, let's say, baseline in terms of the IT networks. As opposed to other countries where this is becoming really a serious challenge. Of course, there is an issue concerning the affordability, in particular in rural areas where it comes to education. So I also understand and appreciate that also they're using radio, TV in order to broadcast, let's say, education programs. And these, I think, will support the system and allow the children and the kids to get their, I would say, normal education, in an exceptional, let's say, format.
Absolutely. Let's go a bit regional now, Ambassador. Now, over a decade has passed since the negotiations between the European Union, and the East African Community and began to establish, of course, the EPAs. Without consensus now, are the EPAs dead? Should we say, are we stalling? Are we on the right path? What's happening between the EU and the East African Community when it comes to the EPAs?
Well, as you mentioned, this is a long-standing kind of discussion, and again, it's a regional conversation, a regional discussion, a regional negotiation, which lasted for more than 10 years now, and we all appreciate the importance of trade, as you highlighted before. Trade is becoming more and more, let's say, a relevant part of our partnership. These days, as you know, we could not, let's say, finalize in terms of ratifying this agreement at regional level because of some hesitation from some countries that we, of course, fully respect. Although we think we have provided arguments and solid arguments to demonstrate that this is really a win-win, say, solution, and as, of course, is the outcome of 10 years of negotiation. And we think that the delay into the adoption and the entry into force, actually, of the economic partnership agreement is a kind of a break on the economic and social development of the region. We are seeing interesting developments in other regions of the world where the EPA have been not only negotiated but also signed and ratified. And this, I hope, will provide a kind of additional arguments to encourage countries to finally agree on this EPA. and to trigger a completely new dynamic into the trade flows on both ways between Africa and Europe and between Europe and Africa. So our sincere hope is that, again, we are always available to provide the clarifications to unpack even more this treaty and its, let's say, implications. But our hope is to really speed up. And once again, we would like to praise the role of the government of Rwanda, who has been extremely helpful since the very beginning, both during the negotiation, but also in this phase, to generate a regional consensus on this agreement.
Absolutely. But how will the EU maintain strong, partnerships or, ties with the East African community, especially when Brexit takes place?
Well, first of all, the relation between European Union and the region and the Eastern African community is framed within the broader relation we have between Africa and Europe, the so-called continent-to-continent relation. Also worth mentioning that later this year we will host the 6th summit of the head of states and government of the African Union, the European Union in Brussels. Hopefully will be a physical meeting, otherwise we will experience such a high-level virtual gathering. So once again, we are developing this continent-to-continent partnership, which has also a very strong trade investment dimension. And so the regional, let's say, cooperation are considered a building blocks of this broader continental partnership. Brexit, of course, it's something which is already, a fact.
It is.
We regret, but we respect the decision of the people of the UK. And as you know, the negotiation is still ongoing.
Yes.
So we can hardly anticipate really the impact, especially at the local level. What I can tell you that the European Union can, reaffirm and, strongly reaffirm our strong commitment in this partnership at bilateral, regional, and continental level. So Brexit should not have any, say, negative impact on this relation. On the contrary.
But in your opinion, then, what lessons do you think the East African community can learn from the EU integration?
Well, again, the European Union itself, and as we mark today the Europe Day,
yes,
which is also the 70th anniversary of the Schuman Declaration, which triggered the EU integration process. So the EU is in itself a kind of an integration and a regional cooperation program. And in this respect, I think we have a lot of experience and a lot of lessons learned that we are ready to share with our partners, again at regional but also continental level. And it is in this spirit that we are working very closely at both regional and continental level to develop and support regional and continental integration. The African Free Trade Agreement, which was, by the way, signed in Kigali, is, I think, an interesting and very important step forward into this process. And the European Union is strongly supporting now the implementation of this agreement and the development of all the technicalities which are needed in order to implement and to put this agreement into effect.
Now, the current cooperation between European Union and Rwanda is focusing on energy, infrastructure, and agriculture, but also other options are being considered for the future. What are these options that you're considering? And so far, what are the fruits that we have seen on ground with these relations and cooperation?
Well, we're talking about a long-standing, I would say, relation between Rwanda and the European Union. And is a combination, of course, of political dialogue, development cooperation, and even trade, of course, and cultural relations, so the people-to-people dimension, which I will briefly mention. These days, as you mentioned, the cooperation is focused on thematic priorities, namely agriculture and energy infrastructures. We are extremely proud of the not the quantity, but the quality of this partnership. Also looking at the concrete deliverables and the impact that the EU support had in the countries. And again, not only in these specific areas, but I think across the board, if we consider, again, the history of our cooperation and the quality of our cooperation. The European Union has been, let's say, accompanying the vision and the ambition of this country. and especially in the aftermath. And this also allows me also to express our solidarity to the government and our brothers and sisters in the country in relation to the commemoration of the 26th anniversary of the genocide against the Tutsi. The European Union has been always supporting the country, and again, especially in the aftermath of the genocide against the Tutsi. And again, we are really interested in the impact. I mean, I rather refer to the amounts. I would not really focus on the volumes of our cooperation. I mean, what I can tell you that we are proudly the largest provider of development and humanitarian aid in the world, as I mentioned, and even in Rwanda, we are a key partner. But my attention and my focus would not be on the amounts and on the quantity and the volumes, but rather on the quality and the impact. So we are really looking at the output. We are really looking on to what extent this cooperation is making a difference on the ground to the people. At the end of the day, our overall objective in our development cooperation and foreign policy is poverty reduction. So, if we look at the positive trend in terms of growth, of course, the COVID will, say, reshape a little bit. But of course, again, it's not an isolated case, Rwanda. On the contrary, we're facing a global challenge, which is also having a strong economic impact, even in the EU side. But this being said, I think if we look at the trend over the last years, we are extremely proud of this partnership because we think that we can, again, some credit should go to also to the quality and the level of partnership between the European Union and the government. Also worth mentioning the partnership we have with civil society organization, which is complementary to what we do with the government. Even these days, I can tell you that we are considering some kind of reorientation of financial support to the response to the COVID. We're also working with civil society organizations who are, of course, in coordination with the government, providing support to the most vulnerable in the communities.
Absolutely. Let's talk about Europe Day that is celebrated every 9th of the year. And of course, it has been, a celebration that people look forward to. But this year, it's a bit different. How will it be done, Ambassador?
Well, Europe Day is very important, to us. It's our so-called national day, of course, at continental level. And is an opportunity to reaffirm the values, the principles, and the overall elements of this European Union, and to share these with our partners. So this year, of course, we celebrate in a difficult and indeed different context. And so we are exploring a kind of a virtual celebration. And I seize the opportunity to invite you all to follow our social media channels of the European Union in order to enjoy and join us actually in this very special celebration today.
Absolutely. Where do we stand in the country, or rather in the government of Rwanda today with EU relationship? Where are we? Probably in a scale of 1 to 10. How would you merit us?
Well, I would say even beyond 10, if I may, and that has been the result of joint efforts. It goes without saying that the partnership and the real partnership is the result of a different element. There is a human dimension, there is an institutional dimension, there is an economic and political dimension. I think in Rwanda we're finding the right balance that again can bring a lot on both sides. These days, we are moving away from a traditional one-way, I would say, development cooperation sort of vision. We are now looking at partnerships among equals, so with same level of commitments, responsibilities, and to some extent also to a win-win situation when it comes to benefits. That's the reason why these days we are strongly promoting the support to the private sector and the attraction of investment. Rwanda is doing an excellent job in terms of generating an ideal, I would say, business environment. And we are trying on our side to promote and take advantage of this situation and identify and promote actually Rwanda as a business destination. It's also worth mentioning that we have recently witnessed the creation of the European Union Chamber of Commerce in Rwanda, which is a kind of an association of private sector operators, European private sector operators, that will provide, I think, an interesting platform for the, for discussion,
yeah.
but also an additional tool to promote Rwanda on our markets and in our business communities. So I think that this is, in a nutshell, the state of the art. But I think everything can be improved, and that's in this spirit that we are really working hard at all levels. Even I can tell you that I'm very often the face of the EU in the country, but there is behind me, there is a team of very competent and committed colleagues who are working hard with our Rwandan counterparts in order to even improve this partnership and identify new and additional tools to improve this cooperation.
Absolutely. Ambassador, what can we expect after the pandemic, if at all it should end, say, at the end of this year or before the end of this year? What can we expect after the pandemic in terms of working, in terms of activities that will be held, or in terms of, cooperation and solidarity still?
Yeah, I would really pick on your point about cooperation and solidarity. As I mentioned at the very beginning, this virus knows no borders. So it's, in my opinion, a kind of a call for international cooperation and multilateralism. So I think we have an opportunity into this crisis and actually a responsibility probably to shape a new world, which is also more respectful of the people, of the planet. So I think about climate change. I think about also new technologies that might also impact on the quality of our life and of our environment. So there are a lot of lessons, I think. Now, today, I think it's too early to anticipate, but I think it would be important to generate this kind of reflection and try to identify, again, in the framework of a terrible crisis, which is having a terrible impact on our societies, on our economies, on our social fabric. I think there's some lessons and some opportunities, actually, that we hope that we'll be able to grab. And of course, this can only be done at multilateral level. So the European Union stands ready to work with our partners under the umbrella, of course, of the UN system, in order to generate some kind of added value as much as we can. But of course, these days, our attention, our focus is on the response to the crisis, and that's why we are really committed to provide as much support as we can, being aware that we are extremely affected in our own country, at home.
Yes.
I'm European, but I have Italian origins, and you are aware of the impact that the crisis is having in my own country. But this being said, we are fully aware of the fact that solving the problem in our country at home does not mean a lot, because again, this virus knows no borders. And so that's in this spirit, I think we need really to work together to address jointly this crisis in order to find solutions. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think united, we are stronger.
Yes, and divided we fall.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir, for making time to do this.
Thank you very much.
Of course, I've been talking to Ambassador, who is also the head of the European delegation to Rwanda, Ambassador Nicola Belemo. And in all this, he says, united we stand, divided we fall. My name is Fiona Mbabazi. To keep it, Rwanda Television.